Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of Bar of the Conference. I'm your host, Derrick Scott III. Y'all, I just got to tell you, we have been overwhelmed and excited at the reception to our first episodes. Just want to say thanks to all who have listened, who have shared, who have commented, and who have sent us feedback. And we're hoping that we'll get more of that. We want to hear what topics and voices you want included in this conversation. And so I'll be putting my email address in the show notes, but it's derrick.luruth@gmail.com. And again, we'd love to hear from you. Now, just so you know, we've got some parameters that we are kind of confining ourselves to, mostly due to capacity. We have a small team here and limited resources, and we want to be faithful with this conversation. So 2 ways that we're sort of like focusing this conversation. 1, we are focused on General Conference. I know that the United Methodist Church is so much more than General Conference, but we are focused and really paying attention to the aspects of our church that really center around what happens on the floor, what happens in the bar of General Conference. The other parameter is that we are at the moment focused on the U.S. context. And I hate that. I mean, the United Methodist Church, it is a global church with a global mission and serving in global context. But also, again, small team, limited resources, and we want to be faithful with representing people well. And so right now we are focused on the U.S. context as it relates to General Conference, but we are talking to people and groups about how we might expand this conversation to include more voices. So just be praying for us as we, in the meantime, try to be faithful with this little bitty piece of the conversation, but also seek God as to how we might expand it. Okay, so email me. Would love to hear from you. And now on to today's episode. Got the really great opportunity to spend some time with Tara Barnes. Tara is a lifelong United Methodist, a wife, a mother, and she has been a part of what is formerly known as United Methodist Women, but now United Women in Faith for 12 years. She started as the editor of their magazine and is now the director of Denominational Relations. She is a laywoman in the Upper New York Annual Conference, and y'all, she is an incredibly passionate human being. I love the way that Tara is able to sort of take these global ideas and speak really clearly about them, but then bring them down to a local context. It's her scope of vision that I appreciate. And I think you're going to really love this conversation as we talk about the holy movement of women that was United Methodist Women, but actually many different names. You'll hear about that, and is now United Women in Faith. So friends, grab a notebook, grab a choice beverage, and let's be inspired by Tara Barnes from United Women in Faith. You're going to love this. Tara, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Derrick. How are you?
I'm doing well, doing super well. Grateful that you're willing to join us on the podcast today. I don't know if we've actually met in person. I think we've always been in a Zoom room. But
I'm sure we've been in each other's proximity, but I don't think we've ever met officially in person.
Yeah, so that's going to be fun whenever we're in the same room together. That's going to be awesome. But I met you in relation to United Women in Faith, formerly known as United Methodist Women. And I guess in my mind, you are like the example to me of United Women in Faith. In particular, we'll talk about history a little bit and the branding change and things like that. But for me, and I'll just speak personally, I feel like you embody where that ministry, that organization is going, just in the way that you've participated in several meetings that we've been a part of and different projects. So I just want to thank you for that, because I think that that's going to be important as we go on, particularly for the ministry that you're a part of. So can you just give us a little bit of history, most people probably remember or know the name United Methodist Women, and that the organization now is a new name. So can you just kind of give us a quick snapshot of the history, and then kind of take us to this transition that you are a part of? And we're here, we're listening. So
okay, I'll do my best to make it quick. It's a long, storied, proud history, and I do want to say thank you for what your kind words. Being the embodiment of United Women in Faith for anyone is a really, really great thing to be in the world. So
I mean it.
Thank you.
I mean it.
I'm really glad to be a part of the organization and the work they do. So we'll start at the beginning. 1869 is when 6 women went to Tremont Methodist Episcopal Church in Boston, Massachusetts. They were locked out too. It was raining and they were locked out. For some reason, they didn't want the women going into the church and having this meeting. What was the catalyst for this gathering was 2 of those women were missionary wives who had been in India with their husbands, because women weren't missionaries until after this meeting. They saw that women in India were not receiving the same health care, weren't receiving the same benefits that the men were from the Methodists who were over there, because of, they were women. They could not be treated by male doctors. So what are you going to do when there's no women doctors? So the women came back and said, we're going to change this. We're going to make sure that the women receive healthcare and the women receive education in India. And that first meeting of 6 women turned into what is now United Women in Faith, with hundreds of thousands of members across the country. And we have partners around the world. We started as the Women's Foreign Missionary Society of the Methodist Episcopal Church. So it's a bit of a mouthful, but what they did was, in addition to giving money to their church, which is still the same today, they started collecting additional funds that they knew would be for women, and also, monitored and controlled, for lack of a better word, by women. So the women would be the ones making decisions about what happens to the money raised by women that should be in mission for women. And that's something too that we as an organization have worked really hard for more than 150 years to make sure that the money we raise goes to women, children, and youth. And throughout the years, today we have inherited the women's mission organizations of, I counted earlier today, about 10 denominations, right? So the United Methodist Church today is the culmination of every denomination that was the Evangelical United Brethren Church, and every denomination that became the Methodist Church. They all came together. And when that merger happened, so did the accumulation of all of the women's organizations that were part of those denominations. And all of them had some form of women's organizing. Once, the late 1800s came, women saw the power they had, even though it wasn't the power they should have had. They still figured out how to make an impact in the church and the world. So we started.
Can I just say, and I won't do this at every mile marker, but
Am I talking too much?
No, you're great. And that's why I'm like, I should not stop you. But one of the things that I continue to be both aware but educated on is the historical diversity that is the United Methodist Church. We are not one thing. We've never been one thing. And I think that we lack an appreciation for it. And that, I also believe, is part of the reason why we are where we are right now, in this great reorganization that we're in. Some of it, I think, is reckoning with the fact that we've tried to act like we are one thing when we are a church of churches, and trying to figure out how to be one denomination. That is the combination, the accumulation.
I know I use that word, but
yeah, right.
That's today's word.
It is this bringing together of multiple Wesleyan streams, not all of them, but many of them. And so I'm it was just a point for me that
Mhm.
even the idea of United Methodist Women, United Women in Faith, is not this one thing, but it
Nope.
is this organization that has inherited the stories of
Mhm.
many groups of people.
The
And
work, the theologies,
yes,
the arguments, the joys, that's part of who we are is,
yeah,
yeah, all of those different, we can be really proud of being the first group to send women missionaries. Also reckon with the fact that that was a group of wealthy for the time white women who could do that. And right, we
hmm
were a part of that theology that was sending forth white folks from the US to, the work was good, the goals were good, but right, so we even learn to grow and change, and part of knowing how to do that is because we have so many different voices that are now part of who we are, to be like, okay, maybe that wasn't the best way to be Christ in the world, but let's keep working on this. What does it mean to be in mission? What is the, theology of mutuality? And so that's part of who we are, is growing and changing. We aren't a missionary organization anymore. Our magazine doesn't focus on, being the holy matron of your home and church, right? The way that even
mm,
women reviewed at the time of how you be a good Christian woman has changed over time.
yeah.
And right, so has the name of our denominations, and definitely the name of our organization. That's part of our history. And it's easy for us to look back and say, oh, we did that, and we hired Polly Murray to write this book on states laws and segregation, and we were an anti-lynching group, and we and celebrate all these great accomplishments. But we also have to acknowledge that not every woman who was a part of the organization then was on board for that. And it's kind
Hmm.
of the same place
Hmm.
we are right now in the United Methodist Church, is we have differences of opinion.
Yeah.
um, what we're failing to do is have the arguments in a way that can then come to a conclusion and then a path forward. So we've never been an organization or a church that hasn't had dissent or disagreement. We we've figured out how to continue to move, down that path of justice, to follow God's call, and maybe this is what it felt like to, our ancestors, our foremothers, when they were in the
hmm
heat of it. But I think the most frustrating thing for me now is that, like, we just haven't figured out how to have the fights the right way, or build the
Yeah.
trust that we need to build. And
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
moving us to a completely different topic, but when I
No,
think of the women who have been able to keep this organization going for this long and changing lives still, because they grow and change and adapt and, meet the needs that are there today, and had the foresight enough to know that, like, we can't just keep doing the same thing. We can have
hmm.
the same goals, right? We want to uplift women, we want to uplift the marginalized, train leaders, grow spiritually, but the methods have to change over time. And we're going to fight about those methods. And I think what we're failing at this point in time in the United Methodist Church, United Women of Faith, we're kind of still moving forward, right? We don't all agree,
hmm
but we can talk about that later, because I know
Yeah.
that's on the
Yeah. No.
agenda. But
And I'll just say that this is exactly why I wanted to have. We're still in beta mode in this podcast project, and so I wanted one of our initial conversations to be with you because yes, it's called Bar of the Conference. Yes, it's got its eyes on general conference, what happens on the floor there in the bar, and there are very specific leaders in the bar who have been there faithfully, but don't always
Mhm.
get to the mic quickly. And
Yeah.
some of those are our
Mhm.
United Women in Faith. Some
Yep.
of those people. So that's why. So everything you're saying is right in and out. And again, this was me interrupting, and so I'm gonna step back out, let you continue the history. But everything you're saying is right in line with what we're trying to do in this conversation. So
You are the host. Please guide me. I worked as an editor for many, many, many years, so I know what it's like to have to, like, okay, that was great, but let's go, let's go back
it's
this way.
good.
So
It's good.
I
But
welcome it.
so we are, we inherited the women's ministries, the women's organizations, even women's missionary ministries of multiple denominations, and that becomes a lot of who United Methodist Women became, what we inherited. So from there,
like we have members who were part of the Wesleyan. I've got my paper here to make sure I get the names right. We've had more than 20 names throughout the years. It was when we first came together as the United Methodist Church, the women's organizations were the Women's Society of Christian Service and the Wesleyan Service Guild. So those were the women's groups, the women's organizations of the church at that time. And then in 1972 is when the name United Methodist Women was decided as the merging of those two groups. So we still have members who've already been through a name change, who've already been through a denominational merger. It's part of who we are in this church. And this is not a split. That's been one of my biggest talking points lately is this is 2,000 churches so far who have exited. We have not split. It is not a mass exodus. It is folks who feel the need to go, who now have a pathway to do so. And United Women in Faith had been having this conversation about, rebranding was something you just want to do to make sure that, you're appealing to the right people and nurturing the current folks who are part of your organization. And we had General Conference 2016, and then 2019 approached, right? And no one really knew what the future of the United Methodist Church was going to be, or if there would be a United Methodist Church. So we didn't set out to change our name. We just wanted to make sure that we were who we needed to be in the time that we're in. And as things started happening in the church, we kind of took a leap of faith and started thinking about, well, maybe we change our name. Maybe we start some new programs and just new ways of being together for ourselves, but also as a way to sort of, once again, lead the church by example. That wasn't our main purpose, but let's show the church what to do. It was just listening, discerning, talking to many, many, many different women, mostly our current members, talking to women who are in the Methodist Church who aren't yet members of United Women in Faith. And we also made sure to talk to women who are Christian, active Christians, and see what they would be looking for in a women's organization. So we'd been having those conversations for years. And 2019 was sort of a tipping point toward a conversation about maybe a new name. And then it ended up being the right thing to do. We can talk about the timing of it if you want to get into some Methodist.
And I'll just say that it was a beautiful day in, was it March?
March 3rd, I think.
Yes.
2022.
And many of us were sitting, waiting on a specific article to drop from UM News or from Resource UMC or from the General Commission on General Conference. And then there was this announcement that did drop on the Twitters about a name change. And I was like, that's a great announcement.
We were first. Of course, this was years in the making. And we had planned, we're United Women in Faith. We had planned ahead of time. Our website was going to launch. We had a Facebook Live event. March is the anniversary of our founding. It's also Women's History Month. The timing for us was great.
It makes sense.
We're oh, they're going to, what was that announcement? The postponement, right, of General Conference.
Yes.
And then not only that, our friends who would rather not United Women in Faith exist in any form, decided to also announce the launch of their new conservative traditionalist denomination. Same day.
That was such a crazy day. So I'm curious, Tara, how has the name change been received?
That's a very good question. And I think part of the timing led to some talking points we might not have had to really, confront otherwise, but fair enough. So on the same day that a new denomination announces its formation, we take Methodist out of our name. So that becomes the big, what? That was, I think, the initial reaction was, what does this mean? What does this mean? And rightly so. It was unfortunate that, you know, it seemed almost coordinated, but let me say that it was definitely not. It was not coordinated effort. And we have no plans to cater to that new denomination whatsoever. The name change had nothing to do with appealing to folks who frankly don't like us, right? They've worked hard since our existence to either change or eliminate us. So honestly, we don't owe them anything, but we do owe the women in those spaces everything. We want them to know that they are still a part of us and they can still be a part of us. If you found yourself in a church that has disaffiliated, or if you're not even in the United Methodist Church, you've never had to be United Methodist to be a member of United Methodist Women. Certain leadership positions require you to be United Methodist. Conference presidents vote at annual conference. You know, some of those spaces where, you know, local presidents will be on church committees, then you do have to be a member of the United Methodist Church. But to be in other leadership positions, to join in the work, to use our resources, you don't have to be. And we have beloved members who are in those churches, right? And who still want to be a part of us. And if changing the name that's a really easy and really apparent way for women to know, come be a part of us. Let's eliminate the barriers. Why still have that? And frankly, the name Methodist for a while there wasn't really the best selling point. We were making headlines for things we didn't really want to be making headlines for, and who knew what the future of the United Methodist Church was. So this was us letting the world know that we're here and we will be part of the church because we know that God is still at work in the United Methodist Church in whatever form it's going to be. We're just going to make that decision for ourselves now. It was to make sure that we didn't find ourselves having those decisions made for us, right? Because part of when the names have changed or the women's organization has been moved under a mission board, or its purpose changed, it wasn't really the women's decision for that to happen. It's been the general conference. As recently as 2012, we were part of Global Ministries. We were a women's division of another agency. And so something we're really proud of in our recent history is that we managed to become an independent organization again. But from 1968 until 2012, we were a part of Global Ministries. We were a division within the church. We weren't our own organization. So that's right. General conference is an important thing for us to pay attention to as an organization. And if we do the work to make the changes ourselves, then we've already done that, right? And I mean, we're still in the book of discipline. So, you know, general conference still gets a say in who we are and what we do, but we've done a really great job of protecting ourselves from some of those, you know, previous decisions, but also of like just doing our best to look at our future and who we want to be and who our members need us to be. And that's where United Women in Faith came in. And I'll admit that taking Methodist out of our name was a little scary for me. I am United Methodist. My job title now is Denominational Relations. And in March 2022, right, we were still having those like big conversations. I mean, we're still having them. We're doing it right now.
Yeah.
About what is the future of the United Methodist Church, and to see one of its great organizations take Methodist out of the name. I can see why some folks were like, okay, what does this mean? But no, we are very much the women's organization of the United Methodist Church. And in fact, the only time in our very long history that our organization had the denomination's name in the title was the past 50 years, was United Methodist Women. It's never had the denomination's name in the entire history, except for that small piece, right? Women's Foreign Missionary Society, Wesleyan Service Guild, Otterbein Circles. We've been, the Society of Christian Service. So it's actually not a strange thing that we're an organization that doesn't have the denomination's name in the title, but right, it's not everyone knows this history. And I think that helped soothe some worries, us letting folks know, like, no, we're very much part of the United Methodist Church. And part of why we're doing this is because we believe in its future and that we want to be a part of it. And that actually this is kind of how our foremothers operated, and they did some great work. So this is actually honoring our past while looking to our future. So the name change is just a way to be better who we are, better represent ourselves. It's not to try to be something different. It's to try to better show who we are right now and who we want to be. We want to be more diverse. We want to be more welcoming. We want to invite more people into the work of the church, period. But remain a place where women can trust that our theology is going to uplift them, right? That they're going to be seen as whole people. That's not a guarantee in a lot of women's organizations, especially Christian women's organizations. So that's one thing we can guarantee is that, right, since we're the official organization, women's organization of the United Methodist Church, the causes we believe in, the resources we publish, the worship services at the events we have, they're going to be safe for women. They're going to be following Methodist theology. So that, I think that's really important for women to know, that like that we're still a reliable source, no matter where you find yourself at the end of the day through disaffiliation, that we'll still be here for you. That you can still, and you can definitely still be a part of United Women in Faith. Don't let anyone tell you now that you've left the United Methodist Church that you can't be a part of us. We definitely have made changes to our bylaws and our programming to make sure that women who've left, or women who are, curious about joining the church at all, that they'll appeal to them, while also nurturing our current members, right? They're these amazing women that do so many different things for the church, leadership, their own form of nurturing, taking care of one another, and making sure that they also get a better experience out of being part of our organization. Because it's not just about serving others. We have grants and scholarships, and we have lots of advocacy campaigns. Like there's definitely an outward focus, right? That's how we live our faith. There's a social holiness that Guy John Leslie talked about sometimes, but part of our organization is to take care of one another in a sisterhood too. There's also a chance to grow closer to God by being part of us. And I think that's something that gets missed as well about our organization, is that you learn about yourself, you get leadership training. Right from the women, right from the beginning, never had a chance to really learn about how to use money, because they weren't allowed to work. Use money isn't the right way to say that, but so there were women who were treasurers of their local unit of the Women's Foreign Missionary Society, right? Had this opportunity to have that kind of skills training that she couldn't find anywhere else, because there wasn't, a place for women in the workplace, or home finances weren't really something that, women got to do because they weren't earning the money, and they had more holy tasks to attend to. But our foremothers really saw this as a place to make the world better, but also a chance for them to learn new skills and grow to be better Christian women, to make their own lives better, but also that only continues to help make the community better as well. We pick on the women maybe for having their Tuesday morning sewing circles. But man, they're making you some really great prayer shawls, and they're also talking to each other. It's a small group. They're checking in on each other's lives. They're talking about the work they want to do together. They're laughing, they're caring, and they're women together in a room. So it's kind of creating a safe space for them too. So I don't want to hear anybody picking on the Tuesday morning sewing circles.
Well, and so let's go there. We were possibly going to talk about this later, but I wonder, some of us, and I know for me, I'll speak for me, I encountered some very specific local United Methodist Women chapters and some local congregations in my area. Connect the large, the overseeing organization to the work that happens on the ground in these local chapters, and how those are connected, if they are.
It's right. We are structured as an organization very similarly to the United Methodist Church, right? Because we're an official organization of it. And connectionalism is really important to us. But right, we have our global denomination who makes decisions at general conference about what we believe in and the work we want to do. And then we have local churches who are what they need to be for their communities. And United Women in Faith is very similar. They know their members, they know their church, and they know their community. So for some, right, funeral dinners is a way to take care of the people in their community. But at the same time, while they're making sure a grieving family doesn't have to worry about food, right? That's just something that's taken care of for them. They're also the money they contribute goes to the work we want to do together. But right, we're all studying the same mission studies that the organization publishes. We have what we call a program book that kind of gives you some guidelines and focuses and Bible verses and activities that when you come together each month, here's some things we can all do together. So while we are raising money for local groups and advocating for different causes in our local church, there's things we're all trying to do together. And the national office, we do our best to resource women for what they need for that work that we're all trying to do together, right? There's no way that we have enough capacity to give everyone everything they need, but we have a board of directors that is elected by members. So we're different from some of the other boards and agencies. General Conference doesn't elect. Our jurisdictional conferences don't. We host our own jurisdictional conferences. So our members choose their representation, and then we have a larger program advisory group to make sure that, right, they're my bosses. My board is my bosses. The members are the ones who tell us what the work we should be doing. And so we set out to try to make sure that work we want to do together as hundreds of thousands of women across the country, we have the resourcing for that, while also, giving local units the freedom, right? We're not trying to be prescriptive in any way to do what they need to do. And there's also local ways we can connect the larger issues we're working on. We want to end the school to prison pipeline. That's the racial justice advocacy work that we're focused on as an organization right now. And sometimes that manifests itself as a local church going to their school board meeting to make sure, right, that maybe we don't need to hire another school resource officer. Maybe these policies need to change. So there's ways for us to learn about the issues, read different stories, hear from different voices, and then find our ways in our community to work on that. Climate justice, that, that can run the gamut. We're all together working for a more sustainable energy use, but with a just transition. So these communities that are based, and jobs that are based on fossil fuel, consumption, and that our transition isn't one that just abandons one for the other, but that we all move to a more renewable and sustainable energy pattern together. And sometimes the local unit, what that means is you're making sure your church doesn't use styrofoam anymore, right? Or that you are getting solar panels on your church. So there's different ways, right? You can join local advocacy groups to make sure you can protest a pipeline that might be coming through. Holding educational forums is a thing that a lot of our local women do in their churches, inviting the community into some of the things we're learning together. So that way we can all be good community partners. And it's not always easy to connect, from national to local, but it's worth a try. And what part of our new initiatives that we're trying is, right, so you're a new member, possibly you're interested in the work of United Women in Faith, but maybe the local unit does meet on that Tuesday morning, and their ministry is prayer shawls. So if that's not something you're interested in, we still want other avenues available to women for participation. Whether that's connecting you with a different, church or at a district level, but we've started what we've called an all access membership that lets you ease your way in sort of with our online programming at some of the national level work. And then, our podcasts, our webinars, here's our resources, here's our reading program. This is what we're reading together, that you can become part of the work. And then if you want to, get down locally, you can, we'll connect you with the local church, or you can be a member at the conference level. And we've never really done that before. So I'm pretty excited to have this option for folks that, try to not only connect you with the work you want to do, but the community you want to be a part of too. Because, we'll have some women who don't really want to go out and march in the Black Lives Matter protest, but are looking for a group of women to do some letter writing together, or send cards to folks who are unable to make it to church. So we're trying to be a connector without having barriers to participation in what we're trying to do. And I see the North Carolina conference has, I think they're calling it a collective right now, where some folks who want to remain United Methodist, but their church disaffiliated, they're kind of creating this way to be a member that's not tied to a local church. And I've been meaning to ask them, how's that working? How many people do you have a part of this? Because it's similar to what we're trying to make sure is available for women who want to be part of United Women in Faith. Is here's a way of participating that's just a little different than how it used to be, but you can still be part of the work, right? Because we don't want to lose anyone in that ether, in that middle space. But I don't have a local unit, so I can't really be part of it. Or folks whose church disaffiliated, but they want to be United Methodist, they might not be ready to hop over to the next nearest United Methodist church. And maybe there's a reason they weren't part of that faith community, but they still want to be United Methodist. So that could, maybe we were modeling an idea for the church, or we were just on the same wavelength to begin
and those
with,
are containers that we're going to need as we travel through the rest of this year. This is all so fascinating, and I'm learning so much.
I have a lot to say.
I love it.
My favorite thing to talk about. So lucky you.
Well, let's take a quick break. Awesome.
That's a good idea.
Tara, I'd love to hear a little more about UWF's global impact and how this large company of women has tried to affect change, positive, gospel-oriented change across the planet.
That is a good question. So I said earlier about how the first big act that we did as an organization when we were founded in 1869 was to send a teacher, and a woman teacher and a woman doctor, to India. Both the school and the hospital are still there, the ones that we founded. The women went over in 1870, so they had some longevity in the work they were doing. But we are a national organization. United Women in Faith is a U.S.-based organization intentionally. When we became an independent organization out from under Global Ministries, we declared, and it's in the Book of Discipline, that we're a U.S. organization. But we partner with women across the connection and across the globe. We have partners in Latin America and different parts of the world that aren't necessarily tied to the United Methodist Church. But that is part of how we connect with one another. So we're a U.S. organization, and we do support missionaries, but we call them regional missionaries. And this is part of our learning over a century, is right, the right folks might not be the white folks to go to be the women who are trying to uplift communities in different parts of the world. We have regional missionaries in Africa, in Asia, and in Latin America, and we like Philippines and Japan, who that's their countries, and so we see them as a way to connect, right? Women in the U.S. and around the world give money to uplift communities in a way that the women get to decide for themselves the work that needs to be done. Sort of like what I was talking about with the local units, right? They know their mission fields. They know what needs to happen to make lives better in their community. And women around the world know best what needs to happen to make lives better in their community. So we try to be partners in that work, and our regional missionaries help connect us through that. And I mean, just some of our longtime partnerships. We still, like, the Harris Memorial College is a deaconess training school that we've been partners with for hundreds of years, not hundreds, but over 100 years. And so we, instead of going to and deciding what work needs to be done, we're trying to be good listeners and partner in the work that to help uplift women around the world, especially our fellow United Methodists. And as we approach General Conference and some regionalization plans are on the table, it's kind of a no-brainer that our organization supports regionalization, because that's, for us, has seemed the best path forward to have right relationships with women around the globe, instead of a colonialist attitude, one that is more of a mutuality in mission, a partnership. So we would love for the U.S. to become a regional conference. We would love for a structure that helps empower our sisters around the world in the way we've been trying to do as an organization itself. If the church starts to follow that path, that'd be great, right? It's a lot of learning to extricate yourself from this system that's been going on forever, really, from the beginning of our church, Methodists in the United States. But it's been, and as the editor of the magazine, part of my job was to tell some of these stories. So I kind of got an insider view for some of how we partner. And right, a lot of it is funding. That's a great way to be in mission, to put feet to your prayers, is to say, like, all right, here, we're going to give you money for this program that you're starting, for the pig farm that you're raising, what you need to be doing. We had some cosmetology graduates who now they have their own businesses, right? And chances are, had we not been in conversation and relationship with different women in different places, that's not something that would have occurred, to us. Like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Well, here, let's partner on that. So I'm proud of our organization for the steps we've taken to be listeners. And we try to provide forums as well for leadership training and just for women to be together in the approach to what would have been General Conference 2020. Because we have the means and the resources to bring women together, we had a couple, we called them consultations, but it was really to hear from the women. Like, all right, here we are as this U.S. organization. Let's have a chat in, I think we were in Mozambique, and then we were in the Philippines, and just being able to provide a space for women to come together, like that feels like being a good partner too. Not dictating what's happening there, but just because we have the means and we have the ability to have the literal space sometimes, or we have the connections to know what's happening in the church, and then we can share what's going on and what the church needs to hear from women around the world. Every general conference we host with the Commission on the Status and Role of Women, we call it an orientation. And the main audience is Central Conference women. I mean, this is on site. It's right before General Conference, to just give the women the space to be together. And we talk about, legislation. We talk about, kind of just how General Conference works, because they've always been in the United States so far. So it makes sense that the U.S. women host those gatherings to let, women know, well, here's how this works, and here's where you could find food. And that's when those prayer shawls come really in handy, because it's always cold in those venues. And we have like sisters coming from really warm countries who then have to shiver in the AC.
Yeah.
So, right, those are our local members who make those prayer shawls, but are helping women in these important decision-making spaces just come together. And if nothing else, if we can keep providing space for women to come together, like, good things happen when women have a microphone and a community. So that's just one way that we're at General Conference, but we're trying to, as we look ahead, right, we've changed our name. We're trying out some new programs. We're trying to make our old things that were working for folks even better and more accessible. That how as we envision a church that could be a regionalized structure, how do we make sure that we maintain those connections with our sisters around the world? Because our church is only better the more connected we are. It's part of who we are as Methodists, and that we definitely want to make sure that the women continue to inform each other and, not only grow together spiritually, but just be better at making disciples of Christ for the transformation of the world, right? And if we're not talking to each other, we're not doing as good as we could. So we've got it on our to-do list to make sure that we have some more of those forums, those spaces, whether they're virtual or if they're in person, a mix of both, that we are going to be very intentional about bringing women together.
I love that. Wow. Let me, and you started us down this road, and so let's just go into it. Your interactions with General Conference, it's not the only space in our system, in our polity, but it is an important space, as you've already named. There's some important decisions that get made at General Conference that impact all the way down to probably local chapters of United Women in Faith. So how does United Women in Faith see themselves interacting with the General Conference? And so I've already heard you say gathering the women. Is there, and feel free to say more about that if you want, but in what other ways do you all make your presence felt? And not all, well, hopefully most of the women who are in the bar of the conference are connected to United Women in Faith, at least those in the US. But in what other ways are you making sure that as we engage in holy conferencing in that space, that we've got our ear perked to the voice of women? It's however you want to take that.
Okay, we make our presence known at General Conference, right? Starting right off with wanting to bring the women who are going to be there together, and it's not just Central Conference, but that's who we invite first, and then any woman who's a delegate. Right? It's a little overview of how General Conference works, and also some like things that we try to communicate ahead of time, like, right, don't bring shampoo, don't bring tampons, don't bring some of these other things, because we'll have them for you. You're coming to us. Some of those little things that can add up when you're trying to focus on like getting to a place and then being present while you're there to do your role as a delegate. Well, we got you on some of that. So here's a bunch of things you don't need to worry about. And then we talk together, and we have women. It's a space for them to share about their concerns and struggles and questions and with each other. So that's just one way. Of course, we have members who are delegates themselves. We have, the fact that there are clergy women and women bishops at General Conference at all is part of the really hard work of lay women within the church. Our deaconesses and home missioners, they host a prayer room So there's a place for you to kind of get away from some of the chaos and just all the people at General Conference, and it's volunteers, and there's prayer activities, or there's just a quiet space for you to go and pray, or someone to pray with you. And deaconesses are something that we've given the church as the women's organization, because, for a while, women weren't allowed to be ordained. And while being a deaconess is its own calling, it's a lay ministry. And home missioner is, when we were using gender terms, deaconess is women, home missioner would be laymen. Right now, it's you pick what title you want, deaconess and home missioner. But it's a historic, now it's a lay order, but it's how women could be in ministry and together as a sisterhood and get trained. And I mean, their theological training is very similar to what a pastor in the United Methodist Church, a clergy person, would be. So deaconesses have been around for almost as long as the women's organization and have been theologically trained, but they're ministries of love, justice, and service. So it's really on the ground type work. You got hospital chaplains. I mean, hey, hotels could probably have chaplains too.
You might need them, depending on how long it takes to get into your hotel room.
They just started a new job field, a new field of ministry.
Come on, we'll get it in there for 2024 for sure.
We've got nurses, we've got artists and therapists and writers. So deaconesses and home missioners are really lay ministry, like on the ground ministry that's been going on for years and years and years and years, and has been an avenue for ministry for those who have been restricted from becoming clergy in the United Methodist Church. And that's not just women. We've never had any restrictions on who you love or how you identify. If you hear God's call to ministry, that's been a path. Deaconesses and home missioners, I will gladly take any questions if anyone listening is curious about what that means, because that's just really great group of people, deaconesses and home missioners. Okay, now I'm coming back to the topic. So we have our prayer room that's hosted by them, and then we also consecrate our deaconesses and home missioners at General Conference. It's usually one of the morning worships. We bring everyone into this wonderful ministry, and so it's similar to an ordination. I don't want to, they're different paths. I don't want to say this is just another way to be ordained, but bishops are involved, and you get your deaconess scarf, and it's beautiful ceremony, and you're consecrated into your work. And this is an office of United Women in Faith. We're tasked by the Book of Discipline to administer the office of deaconess and home missioner. So
I'm just listening to this. I'm like, home missioner. Okay.
Yeah, okay. uwfaith.org.
Okay.
Right, because in the United Methodist Church, if you show any sort of like passion or leadership potential of any kind, you kind of get funneled to a clergy path.
Always.
There's many more options, and this, especially if you feel like ministry, like working with people on the ground, like is your calling. Hey, this is another option that not a lot of folks know about. More and more clearly, but I served on the board of ordained ministry of the former Wyoming conference, my little conference that's now part of Upper New York in a merger. Speaking of mergers, but I didn't know about deaconesses and home missioners. I feel like that could have been a path for some of the folks who were coming through our ordination process, who were there because they were called to ministry, but even admitted themselves, like, I don't know if this is the right path, but it didn't feel like we were equipped enough to offer other options for folks. And deaconess home missioner is just one other really great way you can live out your calling. So they're there, their prayer room, and we have a great consecration. We have members who are delegates. We have members who are committee chairs. We have legislation, always, always, always. At the last General Conference of 2016, 2019 was a special session in many ways. We had 17 pieces of legislation that passed at General Conference 2016. So a good chunk of the Book of Discipline is us. We've we've put a lot of our the things that we feel God calling us to do in the world: climate justice, public education, immigration, voting rights. Like that's how we feel called to, be Christ in the world. And we would like the United Methodist Church to be doing the same thing. So we're present in our legislation. We, we have the prayer shawls that we give to Central Conference folks, especially coming from the warmer countries. We tend to also, I know our plan for 2020 was we had hired Native American artists to make beads. They were pins. They were beautiful bead pins. And I'm hoping we can still do it for 2024. We'd commissioned Indigenous artists to create the pins that everyone who was a delegate would get in their bag, their welcome bag. So that was another way for us to say, we're with you, we're praying for you. Our members are praying throughout General Conference. We also host an action while we're there. If we're going to have a whole bunch of United Methodists in one place, we're going to make a stink, right? We're going to say something about what we think should happen in the world. And last General Conference, we focused on clean water. And got some really great pictures. So this is me speaking as a magazine editor, but we have those water drops if you were at it. So we came all together. And so we have this beautiful collection of people, just cheering for clean water and praying together and naming also the places in our book of discipline and our book of resolutions that says this is what United Methodists should care about too. So we're there to remind people of our work together and let the community know that the United Methodist Church is here to partner with you in that work too. When we have our quadrennial meeting called Assembly, it happens, it's usually between the General Conference, right? So we had ours in 2022, this past May in Florida. We were in Orlando, and we usually take our thousands of members and partner with a local organization. All right, we're going to be in your town. What do you want us to do? What do you want us to stand up for? We're here. So we kind of try to do the same thing at General Conference as well. We're in this space. What local cause can we bring up for you and use our time? And we try to encourage our members to they can be present at their annual conferences the same way. I know a lot of, presidents will have a couple minutes to speak about United Women in Faith or show a video, or they'll have a table, or we'll sponsor a meal. And that's great. But there's also be a voting delegate, host an action, make sure that your deaconesses and your home missioners in your annual conference, have their commissioning service as part of annual conference, because that helps folks know more about that work too. And so we want to make sure we're in that decision-making space. I mean, we have women who are volunteers, who are pages, they're always part of the welcoming committee and whatever conference is hosting General Conference. So we're in the decision-making spaces in multiple ways. And I would love even more of us to be there. We have a unique perspective as women in the church. We're the majority of the membership, but the minority of the leadership. And so that needs to change. The last General Conference was only 36% women delegates, just to start off with.
Is there a sense that does United Women in Faith feel like your presence at General Conference is justice work as much as it is work of being in the connection? Your advocacy, your presence, your actions, the touch points, having things for people to see, that's from United Women in Faith, the prayer rooms, and even the consecration of deaconesses and home mission. It seems to me that while yes, these are programmatic items, they're also actions that remind us that we not only need the women of our church to have their place, they deserve to have their place.
And some of the resources I talked about earlier, we publish a mission study curriculum that we all learn about, we contextualize this part of the Bible together, or we learn about, social justice issues together. Our program book is a Bible study, but also ties it to the social holiness aspect of doing work in your community. So we're equipped. We have across the country, the annual conferences host mission U's, where people come together and study to learn more about, who our neighbor is, who are our neighbors. So our women are doing this work together. They're reading Response magazine. They're giving to these great causes, and then in turn learning from the folks that they're working with there. We have almost 90 what we call national mission institutions across the country. These are community centers, historically Black colleges, daycares. So our members are working with community outreach programs there too. Like they are faith leaders because of their participation in United Women in Faith. So they deserve it, and in a way they've earned it, right? You don't need to earn your space in decision-making places, but like they're equipped to be faith leaders in ways that churches, districts, annual conferences, and the general conference don't recognize. Like the work they've put in to be disciples is really admirable and great, and they have a vision because of that time together, and because of that time listening and reading and learning and acting. That brings a really great perspective into what the church could be doing too. And it's been hard when part of the battle is to convince people that women need to be in these spaces. That's frustrating, right? And I mean, it doesn't just apply to women, it applies to all marginalized communities. Well, do you deserve to be in this space? Like, yes, because we're born loved by God.
Exactly. So, we're part of this thing. So,
yep.
So much. We could do this all day. We should do this all day. What is there anything that you all are thinking about specifically as relates to 2024?
We have 4 pieces of legislation this time. And as someone who helps monitor all of that, hey, 4 is way better than.
Which, before you go there, let's also just name again the need for, this is an intersection with a different part of our church, but the need for monitoring, right? Like the need, we need to be reminded when we all get so caught up in the holy conference thing that we forget that only this many women have spoken today. Only this many people of color have spoken. Only this many young people have spoken today. So I just want to name that. Like, this is, again, part of our work is realizing that we may have to actively, us men, we need to actively monitor and be helped in that monitoring. Okay, 4 pieces of legislation. I literally just did the thing that I didn't want us to do. I'm so sorry.
I'm with you. Yeah. It's not a check mark. It's not like our work as the women's organization of the church isn't just to say like, all right, we got new leaders. 8 women were elected bishop over the fall and the jurisdictional meetings. Our work is done. No, it's because having women in those spaces is what will accomplish beloved community, right? And having more voices, it's just a step toward our goals. It's not the goal. It's because their voices are important, not, just because their background is different from most of the people who get to speak. It's because their background's different. That's why our church will move forward. Amen. If they're given the microphone more. So that's part of the work we do. We have goals, right? We want to see in the world, and in order for those accomplishments to happen, women need to be in decision-making spaces.
Absolutely.
That's just like step 1, right? But we still got to get to that point. I can't wait for the day that like we are where we need to be. And then the problem is, okay, we've got a lot of great ideas about solving this problem. Now we just need to pick the best one.
Exactly. So moving to legislation.
Oh, right. So we just, I don't want to say just, they're good. They're good pieces of legislation. So we will, while, we're making sure that we're on committees and voting and speaking at the microphone when we can and leading committees and doing different work. We learned, we knew this, but we learned last General Conference 2016, especially how important it is to, have good people, trained people being pages and monitors. Because, right, in committee work, sometimes some legislation gets moved to another committee so that it can be seen. So there's physical movement of some things sometimes. And three pieces of our legislation that we're bringing to this next general conference is because they just didn't get decided on in committee. They didn't get seen. One is celebrating Child Sabbath Sunday, and the other is protecting the girl child, right? And that's different. It's female genital mutilation, no child brides. They're really great pieces of legislation that would very likely have passed if they just didn't get lost in the shuffle. So how can we not feel that we did get deprioritized, oh, that's not important right now, when they very likely would have passed. And a new piece we're bringing is on voting rights. And it was, right, we planned it for 2020. That was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. So women's right to vote, and right, white women. But also part of our legislation acknowledged that, okay, we made this great stride, and a lot of our members were really part of the suffragette movement, the voting rights. They were suffragists, but that became a very white, women-oriented movement at the end of the day too. So part of, naming, celebrating the accomplishments we have made, but saying we're not there yet. So we need to keep making sure that there isn't voter suppression across the board.
So, this has been so good, Tara. I want to, as we're closing our conversation, I want to ask sort of what does United Women of Faith have on the horizon beyond the work at General Conference? What are you all seeing? What are you all hoping for as we continue on as the United Methodist Church, and the role of women, lay women specifically, in our future?
Well, we are hoping that our doors have been opened, right? And we've reminded and delighted and let women know that, we're open for business. Come be a part of us. Let's make sure that we aim for gender equity, right? That's an overall, but really we want to end the school to prison pipeline. We want to have just transition to sustainable energy. That's our ongoing work. But I really think acknowledging that what was has to be let go of, so that we can make room for what will be. And we're in that transition right now, right? Some of the new things we're trying aren't going to work. Some folks are going to leave us as well because right, that the new things we're doing might not align with what they want to do. We're doing our best to make sure that the goals we want to accomplish are the same, and we just might have some different methods, different avenues for women to join us in that. I think our future is going to be, right, we're going to do the hard work of this transition, but we're just going to let women know we're here, and we're going to get in the fray. I think we just have this great opportunity right now to reach women who would have never been a part of us before for many different reasons. And it means letting go. It means letting go of some ideas, even some of our beloved members who that's not our point, our purpose to be all right, we're not doing that anymore. You can't be a part of us. No, we want to find ways to continue for everyone to be a part of us, but it's not a great use of energy to try to hold on to something that's not working anymore, or right, hold on to a sweater string while someone's running out the door, and then you just end up with a pile of yarn, when there's other folks who need us and need the space, need the church. And it's something to mourn, and it's something to acknowledge as sad that things are going to change. But what I really don't want us to miss, and what really feels like is happening with our organization, is that more women are going to want to be a part of us because we're willing to do some things differently and to really just get into the work and into the fray and into the conversations and be part of the church and be part of our communities and not be a secret. we're not a secret part of the United Methodist Church. We're very, very, very much a part of the work of the United Methodist Church and the Church Universal. I think I had to go through my own journey through the name change and even the logo and all of that, and just listening and also trusting the women who made these decisions and knowing why they made them and all the voices that were part of this conversation. It feels good. It feels like the right thing to do. And I have no idea what the future is going to look like, but I think we're on the right path, that this really could be something that's just a good, holy movement for women to be nurtured and for us to be able to work together to make the positive changes that we're looking for, while also taking care of one another. What women tend to do in the church is give, sacrifice is our joy, and without really considering ourselves whole people who also deserve to be spiritually nurtured. And so we're trying to do a better job of combining both of those things, that there's joy in the work, but there's also, you're allowed to have joy in the joy of being together too. And I think we're on the right path. And right, we're going to stumble, we're going to fall, but we're going to be there to pick each other up too, which I think is missing in the church sometimes. If somebody falls, like, well, you shouldn't have been walking that way, right? Or that was the wrong path, or you had the wrong shoes on, metaphorically speaking, right? But I think if we can forgive each other and let each other make mistakes, then we're going to learn more about one another, about the work we should be doing. And I think that's where United Women in Faith is really heading. I'm saying that both as a staff, but as a United Methodist who believes in this church. I want it to continue. I think it has a work to do in making the world a place where everyone can thrive. So, and I think the women, we're willing to take some risks and to take care of one another in a way that could really lead to some great things.
I'd love to hear, as a last question, from the laywoman from Upper New York, Tara. What is your hope for the United Methodist Church?
I think I said it in my answer to the last question, but my hope is that we get in it, we get in the fray, that we lead the world toward justice and not fall behind. We should be seeing the changes that need to be made in the world because we've studied, because we've worshiped together, because we've listened to multiple voices. We do have a vision for the way the world could be, right? That's on earth as it is in heaven. I want to see us, I don't want to say move past what we're going through now, because this has to happen, these conversations, these fights, we need to do what we're doing right now, even when it hurts. But we can be there for one another through it. I want to see us really, really come together and be this church that we're proud of, because we've done the work to listen to God, to let the Holy Spirit push us in ways that maybe we weren't even sure we were going to go. But to let that happen. And I love structure. I love our connectionalism. I even like some of the ways we make decisions now, right? I'm an institutionalist. I'll name it here at the Bar of the Conference podcast. But
same. Come at me if you need to. Yeah.
I'm just going to name it because I think our church has a role to play. God is still here. But I also know that needs to change. But if we can make those decisions together, we can still fight about it, right? But if we make those decisions together in a way that is holy and wholesome and acknowledging one another as beloved by God, then even if I don't necessarily agree, I can align because I trust the people who are making those decisions, or they have a perspective I don't have. So I can say, no, I trust you. That might not be the way I would do it, but I'm going to follow you because I know the work we're doing together. I just want our church to like really, really mean something, because we have so much potential for that to happen. We're together, we're connected, we're organized, right? Organized religion gets a bad rap for very good reasons, but we're organized, just like the women's organization. Look what we can do together when we can align, even if we don't always agree, when we can align because we have built relationships with each other, because we love each other even when we don't like each other. The church can do that. It can be that. It can lead in all of the spaces, in government, in business, in schools, in local churches, in the global church. There's so many ways that we all together could make positive change in the world if we can find a way to wholly conference and make those decisions together. And I know that we can do it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Right. I wouldn't be in my job. I wouldn't be United Methodist. I wouldn't be running my mouth in this podcast. Like it's
Tara, oh my gosh. Thank you so much for today. So good.
Thanks for having me, Derrick.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed the episode. Bar of the Conference is produced by the team at Wesley's Revival, a ministry of Studio Wesley. Subscribe to this show on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, or Google platforms so you don't miss a single episode. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time.